Before we get started, I am going to introduce myself. So, my name is Colleen Smith. So, I've been working at IHN for just over 10 years now. So, I work in the online live and assist people with the self paced program. I also help Julia run the Con Ed department. I'm also a graduate of IHN. So, I'm excited to be here with you all. And then also, we have Lisa, who's been in partnership with us for a while now. She does our HTMA course, and it's so exciting because she's been doing it with us for quite a few years now that we now have a number of people that are kind of wanting more. So we're now going to be launching, Lisa's going to be launching a level 2 course very shortly. So we'd love, after the webinar, if you'd like to share the details with us.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now back to the webinar for today. During this webinar, Lisa will be talking about toxic metals, emotions, and detox. So some of the things that Lisa will be discussing will be the fundamental importance of minerals over detoxification alone. She'll be talking about how heavy metals and toxic metals accelerate aging, the relationship between specific metals and their effect on emotions and health concerns, and then how to interpret HTMA tests for accurate metal assessment, and then effective strategies for mineral support and detoxification. So a little bit about Lisa before I pass it over and she does her webinar. She holds a certification in functional diagnostics, which is bridging the gap between clinical nutrition and functional medicine. She's a mineral analysis expert. She's a board certified holistic health practitioner, and she's a member of the Association of Functional Diagnostic Nutritional Practitioners. And then she's also the founder of Vicon Customs, a company specializing in personalized supplementation based on HTMA tests. So anyways, I would like to pass it over to Lisa. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Colleen. I'm excited to be here. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in so that we have lots of time for questions. So today we're going to learn a little bit about toxic metals, how they affect the body from a more behavioral and emotional perspective, and then what we do about detox, because detox is a really big key word for people. But at the end of the day, the body needs to be ready to detoxify. So that is really important, and I'm going to show you how we approach it from mineral balancing. So let's get started. So for those of you who aren't familiar with HTMA, and this is something new for you, I wanted to put in just a few slides to kind of give you a little bit of background about what hair tissue mineral analysis can bring to the table for your clients and how it works. And so a hair sample is used to evaluate its mineral content. That's the basis of HTMA testing. It really shows us as clinicians an average of the mineral system activity over about a 3 to 4 month period. And that really depends on the length of the sample that you are submitting, okay? And again, it's not a snapshot like blood serum testing. So analyzing hair tissue can sometimes bring to light toxicities, which we're going to be touching on today, and issues within the body, sometimes months or even years before it can come up in blood, because blood wants to be in homeostasis. So combining blood labs and HTMA is a great combo. And ultimately, at the end of the day, HTMA is a window into the cell's mineral activity in the body. And so what's so special about minerals? Dr. Henry Schroeder said decades ago, minerals are, and from a very long quote, a very short excerpt, the spark plugs of life. They're needed for millions of enzymes as cofactors, facilitators, inhibitors, and as part of the actual enzymes themselves. Their bioavailability and usability both have a great deal to do with the actual health of the human body. Think about even sodium. Sodium sometimes gets a really bad name, right? We avoid salt. We don't want high blood pressure. But sodium is the equivalent of the battery in the human body. Minerals are really the underbelly of what lies above. Without mineral balance, metabolic chaos, that was termed by Reed Davis from FDN Institute, may ensue. And it just means that chaos within the body's systems can happen if minerals are out of balance. So one of the things that was brought to my attention by Dr. Rick Malter, a pioneer in HTMA, were really two different paths considered, basically two kind of healthcare models that we can really look at. Now, obviously, most of us on this call are in path 1, right? We're focusing on nutrition. In my case, I'm focusing on HTMA, that mineral path, building that foundation of health. We're probably using natural supplements, and we're looking at lifestyle changes. So a very holistic approach to health. Now, that is the opposite of that allopathic kind of medical psychiatric path with a disease diagnosis and potentially toxic prescriptions. And so if we can get our top path in line early, we may be able to avoid some of that medical and prescription need later on in life, of course. This was a really great quote that was done by Dr. David Watts. And so for those of you who are familiar, Dr. David Watts was actually the head of research at Trace Elements International. It actually just changed hands. But he has been over 40 years of operating HTMA and using this to study the human body. And one of the quotes that really resonated with me when I was reading his work is he said, "Most studies do not take into consideration individual biochemical requirements. Instead, they seem to race headlong into making blanket recommendations for numerous conditions based on oversimplified hypotheses." And this really resonated because really for me, what HTMA allows us to do is have a blueprint for every individual. Because every individual has genetics, every individual has a different lifestyle, different nutritional habits, different stress resiliency, and HTMA can really identify what that looks like for each person to really make it bio-individual for whatever protocols and recommendations you're going to make for that specific individual. And so a couple of things again, and we'll just wrap up with this kind of general overview in the next slide, but the nature of HTMA is this. Minerals don't deposit randomly in the hair. They actually deposit in very distinct patterns that we understand how to interpret, and also the recommendations that may be needed to support those particular distinct patterns to change them. The minerals reported in HTMA support healthy functions, both mental, which obviously we're going to focus on today, but also physical. The HTMA minerals are part of a dynamic system that changes constantly over time. If we are put in a situation where we are frightened or fearful or we're being chased, right, that changes our mineral patterns based on how our body is expected to respond to that particular stressor. This dynamic mineral system is very delicate as well and can be disrupted by several different factors. Factors like our diet, factors like our water source, right? Unfiltered tap water, for example. So many different things, even including external and internal stressors, affect our delicate mineral system. Now, one thing that's really important in HTMA testing, and this is one of the reasons why learning how to appropriately analyze the test is absolutely critical, because the test isn't like a blood lab, for example. Not every mineral can be taken at face value, and that needs to be understood so that the interpretation and the analysis is correct. And ultimately, no mineral stands alone. Right? You can see here all the minerals, even metals that are in this wheel and how many interactions and relationships that they have with one another. So this is one of the reasons too why I'm not a big proponent of single individual mineral supplementation, because there's such synergy between some minerals. Some are antagonists at certain levels. And there's also vitamins that come into the picture that can help support the utilization of minerals. One specific example would be P5P, so active form of B6, and how it supports the utilization of zinc. So really important to bring all of this together when we're looking at HTMA testing. So that's kind of a general overview. And we've got some webinars from the past. If you want to dig more into some of the basics, you can definitely find those. Let's dig into our topic though and talk a little bit about toxic metals. So toxic metals are a group of metals with no action, known physiological and biological function in the body. Some heavy metals are toxic, yet some are essential. Heavy metals are naturally occurring, but the Industrial Revolution has exposed us to increasing amounts where our bodies are being overburdened, right? Not only from our food sources in some cases, but also even airborne pollutants. And we're going to talk about sources in just a little bit. Heavy metals may all speed the aging process. And I think I'll take may out and say they do speed the aging process and cause a host of other issues. One of the things that comes up a lot, actually, and it's been in a little bit of social media lately too, is, and it's actually not untrue, is that when we have a body that is under a heavy load of stressors, the body begins to start to struggle to be able to be stress resilient. And this is when metals can build, because we don't have the necessary vital minerals to be able to fill those gaps. And if we have metal exposure in our environment, they'll do the job. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we look at the periodic table later. But this is where premature gray hair can come in, right? So when we have people who have premature gray hair, in their late 20s, early 30s, this is the body slowing down, because minerals are so important to fuel the body, to keep it young, to build that foundation, and also are very important for hair color. Toxic metals are all acid forming, physically toxic and neurotoxic. They're extremely harmful when buried in the tissues. Plus, it's been noted that they are persistent and cumulative. One of the things that people consider and think about is that we think about heavily acute exposures. But what we don't think about sometimes is low grade, low exposure that is over a very long period of time can have the same effect on the body as a high acute exposure. And that's really important not to forget. Metals can be a major cause of birth defects, ADHD, autism, premature aging, remember the hair thing I just talked about, and of course, mental illness. So let's dig into some of the sources where potentially some of the exposures can come from. So we've really got 5. I'm sure there's lots more, but I picked these 5. Foods are a big one. Airborne pollution, prescription drugs, direct contact sources, and occupational exposure. So let's dig into each one and see where some of these exposures can come from. So the first one we're going to talk about is food. So our food sources are becoming more and more mineral deficient. I'm sure you all already know that. And as well, you have to think, we have to think refined foods, right? The foods that come in a box have mainly been stripped of their vital minerals. There's not a lot left in there. Irrigation water may be contaminated, so that's another issue. Commonly used fertilizers can affect food quality. Food grown near industrial plants can also be highly contaminated. And then food preservation or refining can also contaminate the food sources. And it's interesting too, because the level of heavy metals that are allowable in foods are much higher than those in nutritional health supplements, for example. And so we really have to be careful about the foods we're choosing. Again, whole foods, always the best way. And I know that I am telling you something that you already know. Airborne pollution. So thinking about airborne pollution, we could have aircraft exhaust, oil, radioactive minerals such as uranium, right? Think radon gas. Smoking is another one. Smoking, cadmium, arsenic, nickel can be sprayed on tobacco and marijuana plants. You see elevated cadmium a lot if you have, and potentially nickel, cigarette smokers. Cadmium if you have someone who is smoking marijuana. Prescription drugs. Many drugs actually contain metals such as mercury and aluminum. A lot of fillers sometimes are low-grade metals. Vaccines given to babies and children may be a major contributor to metals buildup in the body. And some drugs also contain fluoride-containing chemicals too. And that is an issue when we're thinking about the body's utilization and need for something such as iodine. Number 4, direct contact sources. So these are some interesting ones, and these can be highly exposed for people. Big one that we see a lot are antiperspirants. So regular deodorants, antiperspirants, a lot of them have aluminum oxide, and that contributes to an elevated aluminum level. Many cosmetics also contain aluminum. Some natural sunscreens contain titanium oxide, so that's another contaminant. Dental amalgams can contain mercury, copper, and cadmium. Dental bridges contain nickel in most cases. Copper IUDs, of course, contain copper. Some hair dyes and lipsticks may contain lead. Some treated woods contain arsenic, and household lawn and garden chemicals may contain lead and arsenic. So lots and lots of different exposures when it comes to just contact sources that we may be exposed to that can be contributing to that toxic metal pileup. And then the last one is occupational exposure. So some of the most toxic occupations, building trades, right? We think about even building trades. For me, I always think about renovations and mold, right? And I mean, that's a totally different webinar. But again, just those exposures really put a lot of stress on the body with that load that comes with it. Plumbers, electricians, painters, welders, auto repair mechanics, printing, iron workers, and farming. So some of the most highly toxic occupations from an exposure perspective. And again, another reason why it's so important to be looking at the state of the body to understand what needs to come next and how to support these people. So how do metals accumulate in the body? So the first off is, they enter the body. Right? They can enter the body through intestinal absorption, inhalation, and that inhalation tends to be one of the most toxic that show up on the test. So my example is if you have a client, or even yourself, that live in an area, geographical area that's more rich in uranium, right? A lot of slate, radon gas can show up as uranium in the body. And so that is a source. And I see much higher uranium levels when someone has exposure to radon gas than other ways that it enters the body, which is really interesting. So that inhalation piece, even manganese that's being inhaled from people who live near old manganese mines and things like that, can become toxic due to the inhalation of the actual metal itself or even vital mineral. Organometallic forms can pass via membrane, so that's another way it can enter the body. A lot of elemental forms are not well absorbed, so think about zinc oxide, titanium oxide. Those aren't well absorbed minerals or metals, right? And they're absorbed via the skin. So again, we have to be careful with what we're using. Topicals, whether it is makeup, lotion, sunscreens, all of those things affect our mineral and metal levels. So it's very important to do due diligence and make sure that products that you are choosing and recommending are as clean as they can be. Now, accumulation, metals can contribute to really any imaginable symptom or illness. Dr. Wilson made a comment, and even Dr. Brownstein made a comment in one of his books that, metals contribute to so many different diseases and conditions. In this particular case, I pulled out diabetes, cancer, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, and we're going to hear about a few more once we get into the behavioral symptoms that can come along with these metals. Combinations of metals may actually be worse than a single toxic element because they can cause so many variations of different diseases and conditions, right? So when you're trying to identify one thing and a symptom of that, if you've got more than one at play, that can bring up so many symptoms that it can be harder to identify. Toxic metals cause advanced aging. I've mentioned that a couple of times now. They weaken the body structures, they deactivate enzymes, and they have many degenerative effects. So really want to help the body to be able to be stress resilient enough that it can naturally detox any metals that people are exposed to every day. Genetic defects may be due to toxic metals. That is a possibility. As they build, the body's ability to detox them starts to decline with that burden. And again, don't forget about the low grade exposure that is chronic, right? That's cumulative, because that also decreases the body's ability to be able to detox. So the question always becomes, is HTMA a good way to identify toxic metals? I will tell you that my answer is yes. And I'll also give you some challenges that people sometimes come up against as well. So first off, what does hair reveal? So as I mentioned, HTMA provides a window of activity, right? That 3 to 4 month period. It really provides that record of long-term intake. It can also show us retention of metals, and we'll talk about that. And it also shows us the excretion of various metals. And this really comes back to how the body of the individual that you're testing is operating, about which one is at play. Metals may not show up on a first test, right? And this is one of the reasons, this is a challenge a little bit. And what I mean by that is, because not every test shows metals, some clinicians and doctors believe that HTMA is not a valid way to test for heavy metal burden or toxic metal burden. And I agree to disagree, because you have to look at the whole picture. And when we look at the whole picture, a lot of times, I take that back, every time, if someone is in what we call slow oxidation, and again, if that's a new term to you, we've got other webinars you can catch to be able to learn what that means. If the body is in slow oxidation, it just means the detox capacity and the functionality of the body is a little bit low and doesn't have the energy to be able to fuel detoxifying the metals that may be at hand. And so they won't show up initially, but they may later as the body gets stronger. So it really is a good measure, but people with that misunderstanding, may discount it based on that. So HTMA, in my opinion, really is a good reflection of the metals within the tissues of the body to be able to identify what might be kind of lying underneath. Symptoms drive that too. So from a perspective of identification, what happens at the lab? So for those of you who have followed me or heard webinars before, you know that I like using Trace Elements Lab in Texas. It is the gold standard and tests the most elements on the market. Now, when an elevated heavy metal is found, there are limits that the lab has put on there. And so if that heavy metal or even mineral is found above that level, the result is then flagged and the specimen is placed on hold for review. And this is an important process, because that double check process really solidifies that the data that we're getting is as correct as possible. So the data for that particular specimen isn't going to be released until the elevated test result has been verified that it's correct. The verification process involves retesting the specimen on a completely independent analytical run. So a second specimen, reweighing, redigestion, and then follow-up analytical testing is done. And this is important. And, one of the reasons why Trace Elements is the lab that I choose is because they don't chemically wash the hair sample. When you chemically wash the hair sample, it washes away minerals such as sodium, potassium, can even wash away zinc, manganese, and there can be things that are missed based on that. And so if chemically washing the hair, in my opinion, is not the best standard protocol to prep the hair for testing, rinsing simply in reverse osmosis water or distilled water is a better process. So now let's dive into the meat of this and talk about the toxic elements that we see on the trace elements test, what they are, for those of you who may not be familiar, and some of the behavioral aspects that may be involved with each one. So let's talk first about antimony. So antimony is a silvery white metalloid with poor electrical and heat conductivity. It's known for its use in things like alloys, flame retardants, and semiconductors. Some of the behavioral symptoms and considerations, if you see antimony on a test, could be vertigo. That's a common one. Disorientation, confusion, sadness, fretfulness, even a little bit sulky attitude. So these are some of the behavioral symptoms and emotions that are kind of involved if antimony is in the picture. And really, when we're analyzing HTMA, again, one of the most important parts of this is to ensure that we're taking symptoms into account. Symptoms should always be the driver of what you're doing, because we can have as many tests as we want, but we have to, as Reed Davis would say, treat the person, not the paper. The paper is a guide, right? The paper gives us a little bit of a background and a blueprint for that individual, but the symptoms are the main driver of that next step. Uranium. So you can see here, I give some examples just so that you can see some of the tests that we've seen with high elements. And uranium is a naturally occurring radioactive metal that serves as a primary fuel for nuclear power reactors and is also used for some other applications as well. Some of the effects that elevated uranium or uranium in the body can portray are poor sleep-wake cycles, poor memory, relative anxiety, and even depressive-like behavior. Arsenic. Arsenic is a naturally occurring element found in the Earth's crust, water, air, soil. It can be found in both organic and inorganic forms, with the inorganic form being much more toxic. And so really important because, even in foods, right, there's sometimes they don't even test for inorganic arsenic. A couple of the food sources for arsenic can be brown rice, can also be inorganic chicken. So again, making those really intelligent food choices is going to be critical to help reduce exposure, especially if you have a test that comes back with someone with an elevation. You may not be able to pinpoint the exposure right away, but definitely asking some of those questions to see if there's any answers is always a great idea. Some of the behavioral symptoms are impaired neurological functioning, especially in children, learning and memory deficits, diminished cognition, and mood disorders like depression. Beryllium. Beryllium's an interesting one, and to be quite honest, we don't see it all that much. But it's a steel gray, lightweight, and hard alkaline earth metal known for its strength to weight ratio. It can be used in industries like aerospace, electronics. Electronics can off-gas beryllium, and also nuclear applications. Now, there's not a ton of emotional or behavioral symptoms. I do share that it does affect the lungs, primarily breathing. So a lot of people will have breathing issues, suffer from, coughing fits, could have shortness of breath, and it's clinically indistinguishable from sarcoidosis. So that's just another, sarcoidosis can happen in different places in the body, but the lungs are very common. So it's a very lung-related metal with its effects. Mercury. Lots of us hear about mercury, shiny silvery white metal, liquid at room temperature. It's extremely toxic, can cause hundreds of symptoms. Interesting fact, brain retention. While the half-life in blood and other tissues is relatively short, mercury can accumulate in the brain and may have a longer half-life there, potentially extending to years, somewhere even around the 10 to 15 mark. So very important. And this is where it comes back to digging into exposures, right? If we have people with mercury amalgams and exposure from that. That's a really slow breakdown process, right? We're constantly having a low grade exposure, and now we've got accumulation starting in the body that's causing the body more stress. Don't forget too that mercury exposure, I will share, fish is a big one. Doesn't usually come out this high, the one we're seeing here at 0.23. 0.23 is a lot of times related to sushi eaters, so raw fish. So people who eat sushi on a regular basis tend to have high mercury levels similar to this one. Behavioral symptoms, it actually nicknamed the Mad Hatter's toxic metal due to the accumulation in the brain, which can cause major neurological issues. Causes a hypothalamic intoxication affecting mood, emotions, and sleep. It can cause mood swings, irritability, introvert behavior, depression, and severe anxiety. Cadmium. Cadmium is a toxic element and it can accumulate in the body, primarily affecting the kidneys, bones, and lungs. It is very carcinogenic. It's often released into the environment through industrial activities like mining, smelting, battery production, but as I mentioned, also through cigarette smoke, and we do tend to see high cadmium in those that partake in smoking marijuana. Behavioral symptoms include associated with learning disorders. It can contribute to depression and difficulty responding with appropriate excitement, energy, or mood, elevation to like fun or stressful situations. So very monotone, hard to get excited about things, really don't have that energy or that high mood, right? So if you can think back now, we've gone through, more than a few metals, and depression has come up numerous times in relation to the behavioral symptoms. So keep that in mind when we think about emotions and behavioral issues. Lead. Structural toxic metal that weakens the body. It loves to displace calcium in the bones. Lead is distributed to the brain, liver, kidney, and bones. It's stored in the teeth and bones where it can accumulate over time. And sometimes you'll actually see lead elevated, maybe not to this extent, but lead elevated in children when they have calcium deficiency. Lead can contribute to hyperactivity. The developing nervous system of unborn babies, infants, or even young children are more susceptible to lead toxicity and can cause a decline in cognitive function. Children actually absorb more lead more readily than adults as well, and dietary calcium intake strongly influences lead absorption. So again, if we do have a low calcium, which can be identified in HTMA, and elevated lead, making sure we're replacing that calcium will allow the body to not sequester that lead and it end up in the bones and the teeth. It's also linked to Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And the last one, aluminum. Aluminum is a silvery white metal, very lightweight, and the most abundant metal in the Earth's crust, known for its strength and corrosion resistance. Also contributes to symptoms such as dementia, loss of coordination, loss of memory, disorientation, confusion, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. And this was one of the things back in I believe it was the late 70s, early 80s. Way back then, a lot of people had aluminum cooking pots, pans, and things like that, and they took them off the market because they believed that it was, I think they believed that it was contributing to those that had issues with dementias and Alzheimer's and things like that. So it's hard pressed to find any of that anymore, thank goodness. But there's definitely still more to dig into. Again, some exposures of aluminum. We've got the antiperspirants, which many people use. We've got exposures from contact and occupation. And then, of course, even things like aluminum foil. If we're cooking in that all the time, that's an exposure that can contribute to rollover. This is a bit of an extreme case. We're actually going to revisit this. I have a case study at the end, and I'm going to show you the movement pattern for this particular case. So, as I mentioned before, toxic metals speed the aging process. They slowly deactivate enzymes, weaken the body structure, and as I mentioned earlier, have other degenerative effects. Everyone has toxic metals in their tissues, even newborns. Newborns are actually notorious for having tons of metals because they're given by mom, because mom basically provides as many nutrients as possible to the baby, which if there are metals on board, they're included. So young ones can be very helped by HTMA because of their heavy toxic load when they're born in some cases. The body uses whatever it has at its disposal when it needs minerals. Remember the foundation, I always taught the foundation of our house, right? The minerals are the foundation. And if there's holes and cracks and bricks missing and mortar falling out, we're going to have problems. We're going to have rodents. We're going to have, floods. We're going to have all these things happen. So we need to make sure that foundation is strong, because if there are mineral deficiencies, toxic metals that are chemically similar can be used as replacement for them on binding sites in the body. They can also replace other nutrient minerals in tissue sites, such as arteries, joints, bones, muscles, leading to them become weakened and slowly destroyed by that replacement process. Toxic metals cause irritation, inflammation, and other effects. They support the development of fungus, bacteria, and viral infections that may become chronic until the toxic metal is eliminated. They also essentially short-circuit the brain and nervous system in many ways, leading to many neurological and mental disorders. So what is the wrap up of that? Mineral deficiencies will cause or increase the buildup of toxic metals, so always begin with mineral balancing. Now here's where we get into what to do next. And so let's start with the nature of mineral balance. What does it actually mean? What does mineral balancing mean? So here's where we come back to the periodic table. And this, we're not going to get complicated here. I just want to make some simple correlations, because when elements are in the same column, and this is a very general rule, you can see the asterisk at the bottom of the slide. When elements are in the same column, they're chemically similar. They can actually replace each other on binding sites if necessary. So for example, zinc, cadmium, and mercury, you can see in the blue, light blue on the right-hand side, right adjacent to that mauve color, can all bind to the same receptors. So if you have somebody who has a severe zinc deficiency, you may actually have someone who's sequestering cadmium and mercury that may be even in low amounts in their environment because it doesn't have zinc. Right? So starting with minerals allows the body to rid itself of metals that are in the environment because there's no need to have them unless they're overabundant and acute toxicity. Potassium and rubidium, you can see that on the left in red, calcium and strontium next to it in the yellow, and those also kind of move in line with one another. They can replace one another. The halides are another one. So iodine on the right-hand side in the light green, we have fluoride, chloride, bromide, iodide, right? They all fight for the same space on receptors. So if we're consuming or using things, even medications that contain fluoride and things like that, that can be detrimental to the use of iodine in the body, which is critical. So what does it mean for HTMA, really? What does that background mean? It means that if someone has a mineral deficiency, then it's very possible that metals that are chemically similar may be sequestered by the body to do the job. And I kind of, an easy example for me that I referenced a long time ago and I'll share is, it's like buying the perfect pair of pants. And there's a belt that matches, that fits the belt loops just right. So wearing the pair of pants with that belt is the way that it should be done. But at the end of the day, if you just need something to hold the pants up and you don't have the belt, you lost it, or someone took it, or whatever, you can use something like an extension cord, but it's going to damage the belt loops and the pants aren't going to last as long. So think about the perfect belt being the minerals and then the extension cord being the metals, right? Hence why it speeds the aging process, right? It shortens everything down because it just doesn't quite fit right. The big one too, and I talked about detox earlier, starting with detox is not the answer in my opinion. because you have usually already a weakened body. In a lot of cases, about 80% of all the tests that have been gone through trace elements are what we call slow oxidizers. It just means that their thyroid and adrenals, the functionality of the body is a little low, right? They may have a higher toxic load to a certain extent, and they're just maybe not optimally functioning. So starting with detox means that we're putting more stress on that already stressed body. And it is common practice for people to say, oh my gosh, I don't feel well. Just do a detox and I'll feel better, right? Not necessarily the best approach. So mineral balancing really starts with providing the body with the minerals it needs, right? Get that mortar into those holes in the basement, right? Improve the functionality, support the adrenals, the thyroid, the blood sugar, support the energy levels. And then once the body starts to slowly get stronger, then it will naturally start to rid itself of any metals that have been buried in tissues or even being utilized. And then you can take, as a clinician, a more targeted approach to support that detox that's already happening. It's also crucial to ensure the detox pathways are open. And think about bowel movements, right? How many clients do we come across and, they think that it's normal to have a bowel movement, once every 2 or 3 days, right? That's not okay, right? We need to make sure the bowels are eliminating daily. And detox pathways are sometimes overlooked. So I want to go through just some simple references that can be used by really anybody, right? Proper hydration with filtered water, healthy, colorful, whole foods, regular exercise, and that doesn't have to be hitting the CrossFit gym, doing HIIT training, right? That can be going for a walk every day. Mineral balancing based on patterns in the oxidation rate, in my opinion, of course. Adequate sleep, liver and kidney support. We always need to support our organs of elimination. Dry brushing can help, move the lymphatic, and then meditation and deep breathing also can work wonders. Talking about the detox journey. So specific therapies aimed at rebalancing minerals can aid the body in excreting metals. We talked about that. There can be some symptoms, right? Flu-like symptoms, aching bones, mercury in the brain, headaches, right? I went through that when I was doing a specific approach to mercury detox. Pain in joints, fatigue, things like that can pop up. Binders are very good to use here too. So for those of you who know a little bit about binders, always good to be able to have those on board, binding to toxins and shuttling them out of the body. And again, usually these symptoms go away pretty quickly. It depends on the person's toxic load, right? How much do they have to detox? And each client's journey is going to be different. One of the things I'm a big proponent of is sharing with clients what to expect. Even if it doesn't happen, it's better that they know in advance, because then if it does happen, they don't panic, right? Because that fear brings more stress to the picture. So I always say, if there's something that you can share to allow them more comfort as they're going through their health journey, that can be super helpful to keep them calm. So now let's just touch on the case study. I told you I'd come back to that aluminum chart later, and this is what we're going to do now. So I'll give you a little background. This is a 55-year-old female. This is a pretty extreme test, but I wanted to share it just because we're talking about metals, and we can see some of the issues as we read through this. So 55-year-old female, busy business owner, does not sleep well, goes to bed at 7 o'clock at night, up by 3 a.m., and doesn't sleep that entire time either. Struggles with joint and muscle pain, weight loss resistance, has had injections for frozen shoulder, previous knee surgery, and is likely to have another, often sleeps with ice packs due to the physical pain that she's experiencing. And so anyone on the call who knows about HTMA, I will tell you this is the highest sodium I've ever seen to date. And sodium equates to inflammation, right? So hence why the ice packs and the pain is so intense. And you can see she's got a really high level of arsenic here. We've got kind of minute levels of uranium, mercury, cadmium. We've got a little bit of lead here too. And then we've got an aluminum at 72.9, which is actually the highest I've seen to date in humans, as well as any animal cases. So with this particular case, keeping it simple, I'm not going to tell you the protocol because I think that's too much, but I just want to show you what can happen over a very short period of time when you take that holistic approach and use, your binders and your minerals in a very strategic way. So this is, next slide is the retest 60 days into a protocol. She continued longer than that, but I'm just giving you a quick snapshot of the retest. So in 60 days using a holistic approach, again, holistic approach, you guys know this already, coming back to nutrition, hydration, sleep, exercise, stress reduction, right? A little bit of supplementation, mindset, right? That deep breathing, meditation. Energy level here went from 3 to 5 out of 5. Appetite level went from 3 to 4 out of 5. Sleep score went from 3 to 5 out of 5. Bowels were moving multiple times a day. There was a lot of diarrhea on board, and then actually went down to 1 well-formed movement per day. So really good changes here. I'm only going to highlight really 4. First one is the sodium. So the sodium came down from 1412 to 58, which is about double optimal, but much, much better. Potassium went from 649 to 46. Arsenic went from 0.041 to 0.17, and aluminum dropped to 41.7 from that 72.9. So again, still lots of work to do here in this particular case, but great improvement from the first test, and obviously symptoms starting to make some pretty big shifts. So I just wanted to share that with you so you could see, some of the things that I have seen and what's possible. So what's one of the main things that we have to think about? This picture, when I saw it the first time, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, I was just like, wow, this is such a powerful picture. Titled it Toxic Metal Pileup. Best way to avoid toxic metal pileup is to ensure we're checking for pure ingredients. We are what we eat, but also making sure we're choosing and supporting our minerals, that foundation of the home that we are, right? So that we can be as healthy as possible and not give our bodies a reason, or our clients' bodies a reason to need metals that may even just be in minuscule amounts in our environment. So thanks for joining. We'll definitely talk a little bit about level 2, and I can share about level 1 as well. So level 2, we do take applications because you do need to have either the level 1 course from clinical HTMA as a prerequisite, or there are other courses that we consider as a prerequisite as well. So applications are being accepted. Registration is now open. And the course actually launches on, the first class is April 29th. You can find all the details on our website, which is listed there. And if you haven't taken any previous courses for HTMA interpretation, we also have a collaboration with IHN where we have an all online level 1 course that you can actually take that's completely self-directed. So you can take that anytime, and you'll find that on our website as well. So thank you for joining me. And now I think we are going to open for questions.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Okay, so there's a few questions here. So Andre and said, are aluminum hydroxide and zinc oxide found in sunscreens also disturbing?
Yes. Yeah. So I've come to terms with, I personally just cover up. I don't necessarily wear sunscreen. There is a recipe. I'll actually share it with IHN if you guys want to share it with anybody if they're interested. And it's actually made with like a keratin, like a carrot extract, and the carrot is actually what causes the blocking, like the sunblock. So it's all natural. There's no zinc oxide. There's no titanium oxide, because again, a lot of natural sunscreens have high levels of zinc and also titanium. And the zinc, because it's an oxide, that's called an inorganic chelate, because it's organic chelates are very well absorbed in the body. That's like your magnesium glycinate. Organic chelates are minerals that are combined and bound to an amino acid or an organic acid, right? When we don't have that form, that's an inorganic chelate, which is the oxides. right? So they don't absorb well. So what happens is they end up building and they circulate in the body, and they can cause symptoms and issues as well, and imbalances.
Okay. Um, okay. And then Melissa asked, should their minerals be in this reference range? And what if that is concerning? Okay. Should their minerals be? Oh, okay. Once was there another question there? Oh, okay. Well, I'm not quite sure what the question is, but she said, can you repeat what you meant by looking at the amount of calcium in reference to lead? If you have high lead, does that mean you would most likely have low calcium? Does increasing the calcium help with reducing the load or reducing the lead?
It depends. Yeah, there's more to it than just that direct correlation. You've got to look at a lot of other factors on the test. In some cases, if you have a calcium deficiency and there's lead exposure, then you may have higher lead due to that, right? So bringing calcium into the picture along with some magnesium and other things that are included to be able to help shuttle that calcium into the bones and the teeth, like MK7, boron is another one, that can help the body to start that process. But there are cases too where the calcium may be elevated and there may be lead on board where you wouldn't want to bring calcium in. So it's really important to understand that treatment process. It's not just one or the other. There's definitely a bigger picture to analyze with that question for sure.
Okay. Okay, so here, Anne is asking, can you talk about high blood pressure and heavy metals?
Yeah, I mean, heavy metals, it really depends on how the body reacts to them. Like you saw in that last case, the reaction was a really, really elevated sodium, which was an initial response. That can raise blood pressure, right? Toxic metals can not only raise blood pressure, they can increase cholesterol, they can lower AGFR. They put a lot of stress on the body and the kidneys, and even liver enzymes can be elevated and things like that. And it really depends because the longer they're around, the lower the sodium ends up, right? The body starts to burn out. So it really depends on the state, and it also depends on where that person is at from the length of the exposure, right? Because the longer the exposure exists, the more stress it puts on the body, and the higher probability the body will be dropping into more of an exhaustive stage of stress and burnout.
Okay, so the next one is from Vanessa. She's asking, is it worth it to remove mercury fillings, even if it means removing teeth or baby teeth? And what is the safest way to do so?
We have mercury fillings.
Have you heard of smart dentists?
Yeah, so I mean, there is an online platform where you can find. I would recommend Biological Dentist. I'm not familiar with Smart Dentist, but there is a platform that has a list of biological dentists. I do have the link. I can always share it with Julia, and you can find them all in every city all over Canada. So I would definitely, are you going to remove baby teeth? I mean, I guess it depends how many fillings. And I mean, the first thing I would do is test, obviously this is a child. The first thing I would do is test them and see what comes up on the HTMA test, because you'll be able to identify if there's an exposure that's happening. I mean, if there isn't something at that point, maybe you might want to, if they're going to fall out soon or adult teeth are going to come in, maybe it's not really worth it. But I will say that as an adult, if you have mercury fillings, please try to make sure you're going to someone who has done extractions, who understands binders and everything that's necessary to support that extraction, because I have seen terrible cases where, somebody's gone to a traditional dentist, they've removed multiple fillings at the same time, and the person has had, kind of acute mercury exposure, which has been very detrimental. So again, finding someone who understands that process and really knows the treatment is critical, in my opinion.
Okay, so the next one is from Janelle. She's asking, what supplement companies do you use to start mineral rebalancing?
Yeah, so I mean, I years ago, it's been over 10 years, used to kind of piecemeal supplements together. You can definitely do that, right? There are, if you decide you need magnesium and MK7 and potassium and sea salt and, kind of all the things, you can definitely do that. What I do now is, so I have a company called Vicon Customs, as Colleen mentioned in the beginning, and I created that 6 years ago. I actually did testing 7 years ago because of the fact that mineral balancing can have many different moving parts. And so it can be a little bit overwhelming and it can be a lot of supplements. And, what I was finding in my practice at the time when I was at a clinic was that it was just too stressful for people. So I wasn't getting good client retention. I wasn't getting the results that I really wanted because people just found the protocols too much. So then what I found is I found myself, kind of crossing things off the list, like, this needs to be crossed off, and that, okay, let's try not to use this so I can reduce the number. And again, I just wasn't getting the results with those protocols. So what I did actually was created Vicon Customs, which are protocols that you can either do in powders or capsules, and it kind of brings everything you need into one thing. From the most part, from a vitamin, mineral, potentially amino acid perspective, it's all in one, so it cuts out the multiple supplements and things like that, so it makes life a lot easier. So rather than having like 15 or 20 different supplements you're giving somebody in a protocol, you might have that plus a few other things on top of it.
Okay. And then, so Melissa said, when you get the results, should their minerals be in the reference range, and what happens if they come up too high?
Yeah, it really depends on which mineral, right? So we'd love to have everything in the reference range, but the differences are as well is that there are some minerals that are in loss patterns from the cells, right? And there's ways to interpret and understand that. And if minerals are in a loss pattern, they could be within the reference range, but they could still be deficient, right? So it's a little bit more complicated than just being in the reference range, similar to what you would look for example, in blood, right? If blood's in the functional reference range, then we're good to go. Minerals don't quite work that way.
Okay, so Connie's asking, are there multiple companies that offer HTMA? If so, are the analysis created equal? Are there certain things to look at when deciding which practitioner to work with?
The company that we use is Trace Elements, as I mentioned. That lab is in Texas. ARL is another one, Analytical Research Labs. They don't test as many elements, but they've definitely been around for a long time. So there's practitioners that use that test as well. They're in Arizona. And then there is a lab here in Canada, CanAlt. They've changed some of their processes. So there are some Canadian practitioners that use that particular lab as well. So that's another option. But finding your practitioner, it's important to resonate with the person, making sure that what they're kind of suggesting or the way that they approach things fits with what you're looking for. If you're an end user, I think that that's really important. So do your due diligence and ask those questions and just, maybe you can have a discovery call. Many people offer those. It's important that you have a good fit for sure.
Okay, so Anne has a question. So she goes, how is HTMA testing from the urine challenge, like EDTA?
Yeah, so you're going to see what's being excreted from the body. Like you can do comparisons, and I did them years ago, but then I really didn't find much value in them. You can do stool testing and urine testing for minerals and metals, metals specifically. But all you're seeing is excretion. You're really not seeing what's in the tissues of the body, which is what hair is telling you. So I definitely find hair and then serum blood testing as a package much more comprehensive than using urine or feces samples.
Okay. And then Kristen asked, can the aluminum from an aluminum pan be absorbed into the food if using parchment paper?
Geez, I don't know if parchment paper would be enough to block. I don't know. I wouldn't think so. That would be my first kind of initial thought. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, I would be careful. I'm very careful even with I actually had one of our strategists that work with me. He did his sample and I'm like, where are you getting all this copper from? And then we start talking about it. He's like, oh my gosh, it's our pans. Right? He's like, my wife's mother left all these beautiful copper pans, and we decided to take them out 9 months ago and start cooking with them. And his copper was off the chart. I'm like, you need to put the pans away. It's too much. It's too much. It's not good.
Okay, so Juliana is asking, to your knowledge, are nail techs also exposed to heavy metals as well as regular
Oh
mani-pedi
yeah,
customers?
I would think so. Yeah. Yeah, there's so many different things, if it's nail techs that are using like the again some of the stuff where they're using the drills and stuff, now you've got airborne, right? Remember I said inhalation is the biggest exposure, so the airborne inhalation that's builds in the body a lot faster. A lot of times, like manganese can be ingested, and it can be to toxic levels, but it's very hard to get that. But you find people, and I actually came across a case, and I said to the practitioner in our group, I said, because she put it up, she's like, where's all this manganese coming from? And I'm like, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but like, where do they live? Like, do they have a manganese old mine that's near within the vicinity? She writes back, she's like, you're never gonna believe this. They have a manganese mine that closed down like 50 years ago, and it's 4 kilometers away. And I was like, there's your exposure. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so Chrissy Stanley is saying, if I choose to do the level 1 course now, will she be able to email you with any questions if she has any?
Yeah, so what we have for all of the courses is we actually have different student groups. So we have a network for our academy on Mighty Networks. It's a private network. We pulled it off Facebook just because Facebook can be a bit sticky. So we have a private network that we have the level 1 student group and then the level 2 student group. So you always have a group that I'm in, as well as all of my instructors who teach. They're all in there to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. And then Juliana is asking, will the level 2 course provide protocol samples and creation of protocol training?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about it's more of a higher. So for those who may or may not have taken level 1 really walks through the basic interpretation, the stress response pattern. It talks all about copper, iodine with calcium shell, like some of these more common patterns that we see. So kind of teaching you that basis of analysis, like what are you looking at on the test, the case studies, and then the last class is putting the protocols together. So that's all in level 1. Level 2 takes it to the next level, where now we're including research articles, we're including the background on things, like what's the mechanism of action of why this is happening, not just this is what we see, right? I want to know why we're seeing this, and now we're telling you the mechanism of action in the body, and then we're bringing in some more advanced protocol recommendations to build on what was learned in level 1.
Okay. Lucy's asking, where do hair dyes and other hair products fall into the HTMA, and how do these items show up?
Yeah, so depending on the hair dye, you can have an elevation in cobalt. It could be manganese. Like if the hair dye is really dark, like especially if someone dyes their hair like black, that can definitely affect manganese and cobalt levels. You don't normally see too much with regards to hair dye, and some of the easier ways to kind of navigate that is, ideally you want to have about a centimeter of growth, right? Fresh growth. Some women don't want to do that because then they have gray, right? And if that's the case, I would say like we kind of use a dozen washes as our rule of thumb. So if you've gotten your hair dyed and you've washed it a dozen times, then chances are any surface, right, chemicals are off. You should be okay to take a hair sample then.
Okay. Juliana asked, are neurotoxins such as Botox and fillers such as Juvederm possibly heavy
Juvederm,
metal
yeah.
sources?
I mean, you could. I don't know 100% based on like what's in them. I'm sure there's other toxins in them, of course. I mean, but I don't know if there's specifically heavy metals in that particular composition. That I don't know.
Okay. Chrissy's asking, in the case of estrogen dominance, like uterine fibroids,
Mhm.
can this be a cause of heavy metals?
I don't think that would be a cause of heavy metals necessarily, but it probably is a copper zinc imbalance for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Beatrice is asking, what do you think about the Ayurvedic copper tongue cleaner use?
Sorry, the aerated copper tongue.
You know those little tongue cleaners you have? They're kind of like the little
Oh,
metal where you scrape all the stuff off your tongue.
I don't think I've ever come across anybody using one of those. So, I mean, the ultimate suggestion I would have is do a test and see what your copper looks like.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Anne's asking, how are heavy metals related to osteoporosis?
Well, I mean, it depends on which ones, right? Like osteoporosis, a lot of times is heavily tied into calcium, of course. There are other parts involved in that, but if there's calcium and then lead, I mean, lead's obviously an issue, and that can create an issue with regards to bone health and bone density. But usually the first thing, if somebody's got osteoporosis, the first thing I'm looking at is calcium, right? Doing an assessment, because calcium too low on the test means we have a true deficiency. Calcium that's too high on the test means we have enough calcium in the body, but it's not in the bones where it's supposed to be. It's actually in the tissues, causing joint pain, arthritis, could be high blood pressure, can be blood sugar imbalance. Like there's a whole slew of issues with calcification. They can have gallstones, kidney stones. We could have, even calcification in the muscles and the fascia, right? So the approach to kind of treating either one of those or making recommendations based on those are completely different, right? Even though the condition is the same.
Okay, so Melissa was asking, is there a detox kit you recommend for detoxing metals like Biomed or any others?
I mean, so for me personally, I approach everything with minerals first and a binder. Binders are critical. I always use binders. I am a proponent. I mean, I'm sitting in my office and I'm going to be breathing in whatever's coming through the ceiling vent, right? So I'm a huge proponent of binders. I mean, binders can consist of, humic and fulvic acid, chlorella, there's lots of binders that you can use long term that are healthy, that provide, vitamins and minerals as well. Zeolite's another great one, very particular about what form and what have you, but that's another one. So binders and minerals, I don't tend to go down the road of kits all that much. I know a popular one is the Push Catch from Quicksilver. That's a popular one. But I don't tend to do that. I usually support the liver, right? I go down milk thistle, dandelion root, dandelion leaves for the kidneys. And I go down that road supporting the organs and then doing mineral balancing and then using some good binders and really supporting the underlying functionality of the body, right? Because at the end of the day, when the body gets enough strength behind it, it's going to naturally want to detox, right? And that's when you might bring in the Push Catch or something like that to be able to clean that up if you choose to.
Okay, then Melissa's also asking, when do you bring in the HTMA test in the initial consultation?
Yeah, so I changed that years ago. I don't take human clients anymore, but the group that I mentor all do. And so what I did over the years is I stopped doing an initial intake. So how we run our clinic is everybody gets their test ordered, right? They get put on a mineral prep, which is like a low dose vitamin mineral supplement just to start the process. A binder is included. And then once the test results come back, then that initial consultation happens. So then they can talk about the intake and the test results at the same time.
Okay, so Jordan's asking, is it possible to get the slideshow?
I don't see why not. I think I don't know if Julia normally sends it out or, not sure.
Yeah,
I'd have to ask.
I know most people don't. It's up to you, but the replay is going to be available. So it's up to you. If you want to send it to Julia, you can. And then if anyone wants it, and if not, then people can just watch the replay and catch it,
Yep.
there. Okay, and what are your thoughts on electrolytes or as powders?
Yeah, I mean, I use them all the time. It depends on, again, I base it on HTMA, right? Because some people, like the case that I shared with the sodium at 1412 and the potassium at 649, that's not a candidate for electrolytes. There's definitely some interpretation and analysis to do there. But as for, we have an electrolyte blend that I created. A lot of people will use Jigsaw. Used to be pickleball, now it's potassium cocktail, and add sea salt to that. I'm a big proponent of just adrenal cocktails, right? So you're using your coconut water. I even have mine right here. Coconut water, your sea salt, that's always supportive. But again, I usually base it on HTMA because there are some people that need oodles and oodles of that type of support, and other people that may not need oodles and oodles.
Okay, so Janelle's asking, can we buy those in Canada? I don't know what she means by those, whether it's the HTMA test or you're at the Vicon supplements.
So if you're a clinician, like if you have like if you're a CNP or an FDN or an NTP, you can apply for an account for Vicon Customs at viconcustoms.com. And you just need to have a valid health certification to gain access. And then, you can find all the supplements there. Outside of that, if you're an end user, you're a client looking for a practitioner, we do have, if you go to viconcustoms.com, we do have a practitioner referral page there. So we have practitioners all over the world who use and recommend our supplements, and you'll find them there, and you can definitely probably find one in your area.
Oh, and then Ashley's saying, is there a link for the level 2 who want to attend?
So on the IHN, if you go to the IHN website, Julia actually has both pages up there. So she has the page up there for the level 2, which is launching April 29th. So you can apply now. And then she also has the link for level 1. So I am running the level 1 in September, where we do weekly live Q&As. But we do have, again, the self-directed. So if you want to get a head start, I will be launching the level 2 again, but probably not until August. But if you do want to kind of take advantage of that and want to do the self-directed, then you've got some options, but you can find that on the IHN's website.
Okay, so Vanessa's asking, can you speak out tin and mica? I've seen tin oxide and mica in cosmetic products.
Yeah, mica I'm not super familiar with. Tin is going to be the same as titanium, zinc, right? All those, it's going to contribute. So you may see, like, a lot of times even, titanium will see elevated with mineral makeup, like a lot of mineral makeups have. I'm constantly reading labels. It's like, oh, what's in here, right? And so I'm not going to lie, I usually avoid mineral makeups, even though they're natural, just because you don't know what you're getting, and the forms are not absorbable once it enters the body. And whatever you put on your skin is going to affect your body, right? So it's really important to make some good choices from that perspective, for sure. Yeah, it's not easy to get around, but you can definitely find some good options.
Okay, so Janelle's asking, do Epsom salt baths help or bentonite clay?
Epsom salt Epsom salts definitely help with like magnesium support, right? I recommend Epsom salt baths a lot, or magnesium chloride baths. I definitely recommend that quite often. Sea salt too, again, depending on the person's profile. If they have a really low sodium on HTMA, a sea salt bath along with magnesium might be a really good idea. As for bentonite clay, I don't use it a lot. As a bath, it should help with detoxification. With regards to ingestion, the hard part is that really, even if you have an oral form of bentonite clay that's acceptable, I find that it is a really good absorber. Like when you think about bacteria like Clostridia and stuff like that, is a really good absorber. But I have found with clients specifically that if they ingest, a safe bentonite clay, because it expands in the GI, a lot of times it causes bloating and constipation. So I really don't use it, to be honest.
Okay. And then Christian's asking, do you have a link for the supplement company?
Oh, yeah. So I will put it in can I do for everyone? Yeah, I'll put it in here.
Okay. And then let's just see. Anne's asking, have you seen children with seizures tested for heavy metals?
Seizures aren't all that common. I definitely can relate more to, I do a lot of animal testing, of course, so dogs with seizures. And seizures have a direct relationship to magnesium deficiency. That's not the only thing, though. The other driver, I mean, could metals be a driver? They could, because ultimately it's short-circuiting the brain, right? And so metals can definitely cause that type of stress. But the other consideration is parasites. Parasites can drive seizures as well if they are not tied in with something else, and I call them like situational. Parasites can definitely contribute.
Okay, so Anne's also asking, do cravings for salt indicate anything, or would you need to do a test first?
I would do a test anyways, but if you're craving salt, chances are your sodium's low and your body needs it.
Okay. And then Beatrice is asking, okay, so she was asking for the sunscreen recipe. So if you want to share that with Julia,
I will, for sure.
Then once I'm done the little Q&A thing, I'm going to put my email in the chat. And then anybody that wants the sunscreen recipe, you can email me, and then I will send it to anyone who emails me for it. And then also, does it matter if the zinc used in cosmetics is non-nano?
Non-nano, yeah. So they try, I'm not sure that I've seen like it actually identified on an intake. I mean, we see hundreds of tests a week, but they'll just put like, they won't necessarily link makeup or stuff like that. But I know like non-nano, basically what they're saying is, nano means microparticle, right? So if it's nano, then ultimately it would be absorbed through the skin readily, right? So the non-nano, again, I don't know if that's marketing or if it's actually a real thing, because it should then stay on the skin rather than absorb. Is that actually true? I don't have that answer. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so could taking a mineral supplement be harmful if no testing were done beforehand?
I mean, I'm all about testing because otherwise we're guessing. Right? Like we're guessing at what we should take. So I'm not a big proponent. If it's very low dose, like just a multivitamin that's low dose or something like that, it's probably not going to do a whole lot. But when you're getting into therapeutic doses like we use to make change, I wouldn't do that without a test guiding me for sure.
Okay, Juliana is asking, what would you recommend taking a functional diagnostic nutrition training that you did? Would you recommend it for someone?
I mean, it depends on what you would like to do, I guess, is the question. I mean, I took FDN a number of years ago now, long time ago, and I did find it I found like it was great. A lot on diagnostic testing, parasites, bacteria, like the organization of that, about the body. I've done a lot of studies since then too, though, like with regards to, I mean, once I found HTMA and really resonated with that, just because that's what really impacted my health the most, that's when I started diving in further. And kind of then, the mineral rabbit hole started about 10 years ago or so, maybe a little longer now, and found mentors and things like that. So it really depends on what you want to do. I mean, IHN is CMP, like I have CNP grads here that work for my company. That's another great program. I don't know if you've already done that or if, right? So I think there's a lot of good options. And it really depends on, looking at the curriculum and looking at what you personally want to do and then making decisions that are very strategic. And if you need those, and I actually got this website from Julia, if you need those little kind of tidbits, like, if you don't have a super great knowledge of the anatomy and things like that, you can actually go on edX.org, I think it is, right? And they have all kinds of courses that you can audit for pretty good prices. Some of them are from Harvard Medical, some of them are from other universities around the world. So there's lots of ways that you can, kind of continue to learn and advance your knowledge as well.
Okay, so Andre's asking, which Epsom salts would you recommend? She said there's some from the drugstore are toxic.
Yeah, I mean, I do like magnesium chloride. I use Ancient Minerals. That's my favorite. They have bath flakes. You should be able to get those. I don't know if you can get them maybe on iHerb, places like that, Ancient Minerals brand. I'm not a huge fan of their lotions and sprays because they're quite sticky. You put them on your legs, you go to bed and your legs stick to your bed sheets. I don't like that. So I actually just got one last week. I ordered it from iHerb because it is US, so it was just easier to get it from them. And it's called Life Flow. So Life and then FLO. And it is a magnesium lotion. It was actually one of our practitioners who lives in California told us about it. And it is phenomenal. You rub it on, it's like a normal lotion. Like you don't have to go wash your hands after. It's really nice. I was really impressed when I got it. I ordered it because I just wanted to try it because she had recommended it. So yeah, Life Flow is a really good, if you want to do a magnesium lotion, I highly recommend that one.
Okay, so Julianne is saying when she goes to the HTMA one, I guess it's 1397, and then I guess on our website it's 1497.
Yeah, on our website, Clinical HTMA, that's 1397. It's all in US.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, Michelle's asking, do you recommend diatomaceous earth?
Food grade I do in certain situations. Yeah, it's good when somebody has parasites and things like that, or if they're severely constipated and have gut issues, it can be really helpful. Yeah, short-term use, less like 90 days or less. Yeah.
Okay, and then Melody's asking, do you have a favorite non-mineral sunscreen? Or is it the recipe that you're going to share? Is that the one
Yeah, I the recipe, and I mean, because like personally for me, I don't wear sunscreen. I just, I cover up and things like that. So yeah, I don't use it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, do you have any clean makeup brands you could recommend or give a shout out to?
I do like Dr. Hauschka. I am a minimalist when it comes to makeup, but he does have, like Dr. Hauschka's brand, obviously, I mean, I feel like most people would know, been around forever, has some really amazing products. And then he does like a bronzing, it's kind of like a lotion, but it's really thin. And it just gives you a little bit of color, like just very minimal color. It just kind of evens out skin tone. So that's really all I do. Yeah, is I use that.
Okay. And how much is a test if someone wanted to get it done?
It depends. I mean, everybody has different pricing. If you're in the US, you may pay, again, some people have packages. If they're just selling one-off tests, but they're including the consult and the review and the recommendations, maybe somewhere around 400 or 500, something like that, would be about right. Yeah. And that includes your initial intake and your consultation and what have you as a package. Yeah.
Okay, and then Ashley's asking what was the course website, right? But they can go to IHN and all the details are
Yeah,
on
IHN
the
has
website.
all the details. So I would recommend hitting there and then you'll get to the right links and things like that too, because again, everything on our website is US. IHN gets a special offer. So even to get the discount for IHN, Julia will be contacted to provide that. It's not on the website. So just make sure you go through that channel so that you get the proper information.
Oh, Ashley's asking the website that you were talking about, the education one. She wants you to put it in the chat if you can. um, okay, and then I think I think I got everybody's questions. There was quite a few
Amazing.
questions.
There were some great questions for sure. That was wonderful.
Thank you so much for hosting and for answering everyone's questions.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Some great
And
questions, lots of interested people and lots of really great questions as well.
yes, so thank you so much. We enjoyed your webinar,
Thank you.
and yes, so I wish everybody to have a wonderful evening. And Nicole, I will be in touch. Okay. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night, and thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay. Bye.